The first rays of sunlight are now coming on majestic Mount Kailash behind me as Indian pilgrims arrive here in Tibet for the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra, reopening people-to-people ties that have been frozen since 2020. And officials like NSA Ajit Doval and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh traveled to China for official and SCO meetings. Is there an opening? And can India and China put their most recent past of mistrust and suspicion from the Galwan clashes to Operation Sindoor behind them? Hello and welcome to this special edition of Worldview at the Hindu. I'm Suhasini Haider. Let's tell you all that's happened. Over the past week, 36 Indian pilgrims crossed over into Tibet, into China via the Nathula Pass from Sikkim, and many more batches are expected, making the first time they've been allowed for the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra in 6 years. This is a mechanism that was ruptured first by COVID and then by the LAC military standoff and Galwan killings. It was decided it would be restored after the 2024 Xi-Modi meeting. Meanwhile, NSA Ajit Doval travelled to Beijing and met his counterpart, a special representative on border resolution, Wang Yi, and gave a statement at the SCO condemning double standards on terrorism. Finally, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh travelled to Qingdao for another SCO meeting, this time more heated as India refused to sign the joint statement that spoke of terrorism in Pakistan but not in India. No mention of the Pahalgam attacks. More exchanges are expected in the next few months, as well as the reopening and restoring of a number of mechanisms. But first, the reason I'm amongst a group of journalists that are here in Tibet, in what's called Burang County or the Pulan area here, which is next to Mount Kailash and the Mansarovar Lake, is really to cover the restoration of an important bilateral people-to-people mechanism between India and China, that of the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra. That has seen this year a restoration. Not since 2020 have these groups come across. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs and the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs work very closely together. There's a special Kailash Manasarovar Yatra organization as well that makes the arrangements, draws lots for about 5,000 people who applied to be part of that yatra. About 750 won the lottery, are eligible to come, but then they have to go through tests, medical tests. Many of them don't clear those. So we do expect between 650 to 700 pilgrims in all to make the crossing this year. Where I'm standing right now is actually a spot where pilgrims begin the circumambulation, or the parikrama, or Kora as it's known, around Mount Kailash. It's a 52-kilometer trek in all. The yatris who come from India have been acclimatized and are able to do this over a period of about 2 to 3 days. And they go around praying, but we also see many locals come here. You see a Buddhist installation. These are the scrolls which they go through every morning. And others as well do the parikrama. We saw people taking their dogs as well through this. It's an extremely spiritual journey. It's also just a sacred space for centuries for people of many faiths.
When we got shortlisted, we were actually very excited, and when we came here, the arrangements and everything on both the side, Indian side as well as the Chinese side, it was really good. They took good care of us, and we are really blessed that we are in the first batch. And yeah, we really thank God for giving us this opportunity.
Restricting number of pilgrims should not matter much. The eco-friendly tourism and basically the education and how we have to behave towards the environment, that education is more important than limiting the number of pilgrims. This is what I feel.
Now you're going to forgive me for being a little breathless as I speak, simply because of the altitude here. When it comes to the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra and the reopening, there are many aspects to the significance of this. There is the cultural, the historical, the spiritual aspect of the yatra, and we've been speaking to so many of the pilgrims. But the fact that China and India are cooperating to bring 750 pilgrims over these passes, cross Himalayan cultural exchanges, it's called, to Kailash and to Mansarovar for this yatra after a gap of 6 years, has a different message as well. This is the restoration of the normal mechanisms between India and China that had more or less been frozen or put on pause over the last few years. So what are some of the other mechanisms that are either underway or are being looked at? We've already heard from the Foreign Secretary speaking about the restoration of information sharing on hydrological data. So powerful rivers like the Brahmaputra, the Indus, that come from China and India, they're able to now share information about that. There is a huge demand from China, but also from many businessmen in India for the restoration of direct flights between the two countries. We're also looking at that possibility happening at a time when there will be an intensification of meetings at an official level. We've already seen NSAIG Doval, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, come to China for official meetings as well as the SCO. But in addition, we're expecting External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar to come to China as well for the SCO Foreign Ministers meeting and for talks. Prime Minister Modi is expected for the SCO summit at the end of August. There's also the 24th round of SR talks. So that's another mechanism that they're looking at restoring properly in terms of discussing the border dispute, border resolution. And finally, there's a new mechanism that India and China have agreed to, that China has been asking for in particular, to discuss the economic issues, business-related issues between the two countries. In 2020, India had put new restrictions on Chinese businesses, particularly for FDIs, that had got strained, that had the relationship much more strained as a result of it in terms of economic ties. Trade has continued, but Chinese businesses in India have had a harder time. So these are the 4 or 5 new or old mechanisms that are being restored, are being bolstered at this time, which is why it makes this particular moment with the Kailash Manasarovar Yatra particularly significant. We're finally here at Mansarovar Lake, and if it's not obscured by the clouds, you can see Mount Kailash behind me. If Mount Kailash is really associated with being the abode of the gods, a place of spiritual energy as well as power, then Mansarovar is associated with purity, with prayer, and with the cleansing of the mind, Mansarovar. That's the reason why pilgrims who complete the circulation of the parikrama of Mount Kailash then come to Mansarovar and absolve themselves of their sins and take the waters here, as well as pray for their ancestors. It's really their last stop before they then begin their journeys back home. And the 36 pilgrims who came and more others who will come will also head back to India from here. What many actually don't know is not 50 kilometers from here lies Rakshastal. Rakshastal is the lake of the demons, as the name suggests, and it is a dark lake about the size of Mansarovar. And if Mansarovar's water is sweet to taste, the water in Rakshastal is actually salty and considered unfit for human consumption. In fact, in the India-China context, the normalization of ties between the two countries, as the two governments are trying to do, is going to face similar brackish challenges side by side with all the initiatives that they try to take. And there are many. To begin with, there's the lingering differences over the line of actual control, as well as the unresolved issues of the standoff between the two countries from 2020 to 2024. While we saw in October 2024 after the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping, a denouement of sorts and an announcement that the armies would disengage, we haven't yet seen, 8 months later, announcements on the demobilization of troops and then de-escalation. India's concerns, and we're only talking about geopolitical concerns, also with China's support, both in terms of hardware, tactics, as well as political support to Pakistan, especially seen during Operation Sindoor and after the Pahalgam terror attacks. Also, India and China have often opposed each other when it comes to cross-border terrorism resolutions at international fora, like the United Nations, the banning of terrorists, as well as cross-border terror resolutions. India has, in fact, got other differences from China when it comes to issues like Iran, and all eyes will be on after India's walkout from the SCO statement on Iran and Israel, where India will stand when Prime Minister Modi goes to Brazil for the BRICS summit in early July. Finally, there is the issue of China's relations with India's neighborhood, with South Asia. To begin with, there's the Belt and Road Initiative, which India has opposed because they believe the BRI is actually a non-transparent initiative. It is actually going through territory that India claims, and it ends up debt-trapping smaller countries, many of those in India's neighborhood. In recent times, we've also seen China's forays with India's neighbors, like the Bangladesh-Pakistan conference or other conferences in South Asia that lead to more suspicions. Certainly very complex issues between the two, and that's not even counting the basic bilateral economic and other issues the two sides share. Very complex, unlike the calm waters behind me. So what's Worldview's take? The reopening of the Yatra and the restoration of other bilateral mechanisms indicates that Delhi and Beijing are now preparing to normalize ties and perhaps even build better relations between them. This is not the first time an attempt has been made at a new chapter, but the opening of the Yatra and the sheer joy it has brought for so many pilgrims is an important reminder of a basic fact of diplomacy, that people-centric relationships must not be held hostage to fractious, difficult, political relationships, as they are the enduring link between societies, nations, and civilizations. That's all we have time for here on Worldview, so I'm going to sign off. But here in Burang County, below Mount Kailash, this is Suhasini Haider from the team at Worldview. Thanks for watching.